I am very excited to do this. Welcome to South Beach Sessions. This man has an uncommon zest for life. It's not just that he was a surgeon and then became a comedian. It's not just that he writes children's books and autobiographies. Not that he fled Egypt or is the Jon Stewart of the Middle East. He's also a salsa and tango teacher. He is a kite surfer. This man has lived a big life. Bassem Youssef with us. Thank you for making the time. Just flew in from Dubai, just got here 2 hours ago. Your life is big and impactful. I say nothing that's untrue here. It seems like I'm flattering you too much. You get uncomfortable with it seems like, but I am thrilled to be talking to you. Thank you.
I'm not getting uncomfortable. It's just like you're the hype. People are set up for a disappointment. All right, let's see what that kite surfer, dancer, doctor, comedian has to say that I don't already know.
Well, but I mean, what do you regard as the most interesting parts of your story? Because I don't know where to start with you.
Maybe I should be the most mysterious man, like the guy who does these commercial Dos Equis. Yeah, Dos Equis. I'll be like, I'm getting what more white hair, so I'm getting into my midlife crisis. So I should be in that.
I don't know what's next for you on challenges. We were talking before you started here. You seem to be someone who likes challenges.
I don't know. It seems that actually, as a matter of fact, I'd like to stay away from challenges. My aim in life is to live a comfortable life, but it seems that I'm failing. Because I always find myself in situations that I don't want to be, but I end up being there. So and then people come to me and they put me on a pedestal, and they come to me with all of these questions and all of these aspirations and all of these hopes. And I said, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to disappoint you guys, because I think I'm just like being like pushed or thrown from one situation to the other with absolutely no planning. And it seems that it lands sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does.
I mean, are you thinking, I don't know that you answered my question about what you regard as the most interesting part of your story, because I don't know whether you're talking about your offices being raided or, trying to use comedy to have impact in Egypt where it's slightly less welcome, I would imagine, than it is in a place that's freer.
Well, I don't know what is the most interesting. I think it is interesting. It's different from people from different places. Like, so people who are from my part of the world, from Egypt, they are like done with that. They already know my story. It's like, all right, this is yesterday news. We're done. And there are people who are in the States that are more interested in what happened to me in Egypt, because that's for them is very alien, and that is something new for them. And but if you want to ask about what I think, I'm in a constant state of fear of messing up, because I always feel that I've been put into this career of comedy while I don't deserve it, because I lived all my life as a doctor, 37 years as a doctor, and then started the comedy show. And I always feel that I was in the wrong place, because I never planned for it. I never worked for it. And then I'm doing stand-up comedy, and I always feel that I haven't put the right amount of work to have my own show or to be touring, while I know that a lot of, like, I go to comedy shows, and there's all of these comedians, and I know that they're better than me, and they've been English at least is their first language, and they've been doing that for a longer time, and I feel that like I'm getting more opportunities than them, and I always have this kind of feeling that I don't deserve what I am, and I don't deserve all of this like love and adoration and expectations, because people will always get disappointed. So,
I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. A constant fear? You're living in constant fear.
Yeah. Constant fear of messing up. Constant fear of messing up my next show. Constant fear of running out of material. Constant fear of, like, when I'm done with that special that I'm touring with, that I'm not going to be able to write the second one. I don't know what will be. I'm basically, I feel I am on a borrowed time, and that time will end up anytime soon. And I felt that when I was on the height of my fame in Egypt. And that 3.5 years where the show was crazy. It's like 40 million viewers each episode. That's like the Super Bowl every single Friday. And I was always depressed, and the people around me was like, why don't you just like enjoy it? And I said, like, because I'm waiting for this to end. And it did. It's taken away from me. And then I'm here and I'm touring with this. Of course, I have this kind of like new pump because of the Piers Morgan show. And now everybody is like asking me to go and do all of these interviews and have all of these appearances. And I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, when is this going to end?
That seems more joyless than laughter should feel.
Yeah. Well, they say comedy comes from pain.
Yeah.
So I try to kind of like keep a little bit of pain in my life.
So it can't be grateful, though. It won't work. Grateful grateful works against comedy.
No, I'm very grateful. That's what I'm trying to learn actually now, to be actually more grateful. I mean, I'm always stressed between two things: the stressed of not making it or not being up to the expectations, and I'm afraid that I'm not going to be good enough. And the one thing that I'm trying to kind of insert more in my life is kind of like to try to enjoy what I have instead of trying to think of what will happen. But I can't, because this is me always thinking about what will go wrong, what will go wrong. This is like constant worrying. I have like, these are like two forces in my mind working against each other. The what's gonna go wrong, as like, why don't you just enjoy it as it happens? So this is.
I have trouble with what you're talking about. I have had, I've gotten some of the things that I've wanted, but I enjoy them less than I should because the mind is a plague. Fear is a plague, and it all gets in the way of joy. It's not, I wasn't saying that you weren't grateful, but I would think that gratitude would help you with joy, that gratitude would stop your mind from humming. This is probably part of what makes you great at things, is that you're a perfectionist this way and the fear is fuel. But I would also think that you would have the confidence of success and be able to enjoy the moments while you're in them, but fear's not going to help you do that.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Like, so let's say I was just in Boston last week. I did 3 amazing shows, 1 in Arabic and 2 in English. I feel amazing after each show. This is like which is much better than because when I started stand-up comedy, I sucked because I was new at it. So now I'm grateful that I feel good about that show. But even when I had the television show back in Egypt, I would say, all right, what am I going to do in the next show? Where I was going to go? Will I fill seats? Will I be able? I have like a European tour coming up, and I'm afraid I'm not going to sell seats or sell tickets. I'm afraid that people will come and not enjoy the show. I'm always having this idea of like, when I think of myself as like, people are paying tickets to come and see me, and they should get their money worth. And that's why for me, when I'm on stage, I always look to the people who are not laughing or smiling. It's like, I'm going to get them. Not because like I want to give them a good time. This kind of like, I think it's a kind of a provider mentality in me, which I got it from my dad, who always want people around him to be happy. So that's the whole thing. I mean, again, it's a lot of expectations, a lot of people wanting me to do stuff or expecting me to do stuff, and I'm just like afraid of not being up to it.
Was it the same with surgery, with being a cardiothoracic surgeon?
I hated being a surgeon. I did it for 19 years, and I hated every second of it. It's crazy. I was like 7 years of medical school, 12 years practicing, and I never liked a single day of it. But I did it because that's what I was supposed to do. I had good grades, so I had to go to medical school.
That's the exile parent stuff. Your father was a judge, your mother was a professor. Like, exile parents, immigrant parents, you sort of have
No, but that was in Egypt.
Right. But but what I'm saying is that I feel culturally, like a lot of cultures, you have like 4 or 5 choices on what success looks like professionally, and medicine is one of them.
Yeah. So medicine, if you get good grades, go to medical school. Why would you go to anywhere else? So I went to medical school 7 years, and then I just didn't enjoy. That's why I did salsa, because I needed a vent. So I would go to my shifts, and I finished my shifts and go teach salsa. And like, people in my department, my cardiac surgery department, hated me. They always like, it's like, if you're not in misery with us, if you're not having a bad time like every one of us, why do you have to have a good time and dance with women? Come here and just like deal with death like everybody else. People were depressed, I always felt out of place. I always felt when I was medical school, I felt out of place because I just didn't like I looked to have my own social life outside. And when I was in my high school, my parents saved so much money to put me on an expensive private school. And I went with the richest people in the country, and I wasn't as rich. So I always felt out of place. So I have this kind of feeling always out of place. I'm not rich, and then I'm in a rich kids school, and I don't like medicine, and I went to medical school. I went to salsa while I'm being a doctor, so I was different from everybody else. I went into comedy in my late 30s, early 40s, and everybody thought that I'm an intruder because I didn't come from that space. So I always feel that I'm out of place. I'm fish out of water, and that's why I'm struggling to feel that like will I be comfortable with who I am, because I always feel that I'm doing these stuff while I'm not supposed to do. Even with the Piers Morgan show, I went viral, and I'm not even a politician, and then suddenly I went viral for all of the things that you shouldn't go viral for. So I always feel that like I'm in a place where I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just like I'm being put into spaces that I don't belong to, and that's why this like continuous discomfort that I have.
Seems like a special kind of torturous prison to spend 20 years with the meticulousness of and the obsessiveness that surgery requires, with lives in your hands, to hate every day of that.
Oh, yeah. And then I went to comedy, and I took the precision and I took the obsession. That's why I don't enjoy it.
A different kind of misery, right?
I know. I don't know. I think, I don't know.
Well, which feels better, praise, applause, or laughter?
Laughter. Because laughter, you cannot praise and applause. Applause, you can do it just like out of, being nice. Praise could come from a hypocritical or just being, but like laughter, you cannot fake that.
Do you examine your what you call depression there? Because all of the
no,
fact...
I'm not. Why do you? I'm not depressed.
No,
I'm very, very happy. Why do you think I'm depressed? Is it because I'm telling you that I'm still living in constant fear that I feel that I'm not going to do? Is that like a sign of depression? I don't think that's depression. Also, that's like I'm being very. That's also denial.
I only seized on it because you used the word you used the word depressed, and what you're describing sounds like it's really hard to be happy inside that, because you can't be a surgeon flippantly or part-time.
No, you can't.
Like this thing you hate, you're immersed in it, and it's hard to get away. Like salsa classes are nice, but it's hard to get away from it.
It helped. It also got me a lot of girls.
Yeah,
which,
well, that helps also.
I mean, come on, listen, like a heart surgeon and a salsa teacher, that's a chick magnet.
And a comedian. Like
no,
but I'm saying
not
you had
at the time.
No, but you had the funny in you. You had to have the funny in you. You weren't a comedian, but
maybe. But like, again, it's like, I always find a way to make a bad situation better. So if like medical school, I find salsa. Comedy, actually, it's like it's nice being comedy, but like I like to travel. I again, it's not being depressed. I'm very, very grateful for what I've been going through, but it is just a lot of people when they come and they talk to me about my life, they think I'm like, oh, I'm like, you have to live this great life, but deep inside, I always feel that I'm undeserving, which you can always people say it's the imposter syndrome, whatever. But I always feel that I wasn't prepared. I didn't study in that field. I don't deserve to be in that field for long, because I see people who have been there longer than me, and they are not as established or as famous. So I feel like there's something very wrong. I feel this is, I don't know. Like I always feel I'm always waiting for whatever I'm going through to crumble.
Have you explored the roots of why you do that?
I don't know. No, I don't know. Maybe it's the I have no. It's just like, again, this is a very unusual life. I'm very grateful for it, but again, I don't know if I'm good enough to maintain it. As I said, like I am now touring with 2 different specials, one in Arabic and one in English. And the one thing that is bugging me is like, what am I going to do if I sell my special? What will be my second special? What I'm going to write about?
That's the opposite. That's the opposite of like, that seems to be playing defense against anything that can resemble joy. If you're always afraid of what's next and you can't enjoy what's happening, or it makes it harder to enjoy what.
That's why I come on podcasts and I do that as therapy instead of like paying it, because it's very expensive to pay for therapy. So yeah, you're my therapist now.
Okay, well,
take it.
Well, you've got a lot to explore. I am fascinated by both your journey and your choices and your fight. Like you. I mean, I don't know if you would classify yourself as brave. Maybe you'd just say circumstances forced me to be brave. But you were doing comedy that was attacking politicians sarcastically. Jon Stewart of the Middle East doesn't seem like something that can exist.
Well, if here's the thing, there's two ways to look at it. There's just like, oh, you did these kind of political satire in a climate that was extremely unlikely to be there, and it like you went up against the powers that be. You're so brave. But I look at it from a different place. After 2011, after the Arab Spring, there was a space where people were allowed, like there was like a fluidity in politics and in freedom and everything. So I did the show, and the show became bigger. Once the show became big, you always have to perform on a higher level. I did what I did not because I wanted to go against the government. I did what I did because that was good comedy. Because if you didn't do that, that will be like mundane comedy. So I tried to fight as much as possible, not because I wanted to prove a point, or not because I wanted to be some sort of standing against the powers or the authority. It's just because this is what political satire looks like, and I tried to push as much as I can until I couldn't do it anymore. So I did it against the Islamists, and there was like a much more freedom at the time because they had the freedom and we had the freedom. And then the military came, and then the freedom were less. Not because the Islamists were more democratic, it's just because the atmosphere allowed everybody to have more freedom. And then under the military, I tried to push as much as I can within the limits that I can, and at a certain point, I couldn't. So I left. And so the whole idea of like I was not being there as a political activist or a freedom fighter. I was just trying to do comedy because that is the way to do comedy. So because if I didn't do it anywhere else, it would be bad comedy. That's the whole thing. That was the driving force, not being someone who is going against the authority. So I think people in the Middle East mess this, like they kind of like confuse this. So when I stopped doing it because I can't, they called me a coward, they called me a sellout. You left, and it's like, what am I supposed to do? Get in jail so you'll be happy? So why don't you do it from outside? It's like political satire works if you are in the country. If you do it from outside, it's not going to be the same. And I don't want to be a political activist who just like throw rocks from outside. So when I started doing stand-up comedy, I did it in a way because that is the only way I could actually have any foothold of the American media scene. So basically, I did everything as a base of like survival, as a way to do the comedy that I want to do. But it was not about like being brave or being. I just like people put too much hope on comedians, and that's wrong. Because they go to the people in the media and they go to people in politicians, and they're doing a really bad job. So who is doing their job? Comedians, because we make fun of stuff. So they think that we have the answers. We don't. We just make fun of stuff. And that is the problem. I always say that this whole thing about like the infatuation of comedians, that they are the new thought leaders, they are the new philosophers. Our role ends at the edge of our theater, at the edge of the television. And this kind of like hope that you put on comedians put a huge stress on them that they shouldn't be there. So I think that's the whole thing about like conflating comedy and politics and activism with humor.
What was the most scared you were between the the arrest warrants and the raiding of your offices? Like there had to be some fear in there. If you're not assigning bravery to it, there were consequences.
Well, the interrogation was for some reason I was taking it lightly. And I don't know, because I didn't believe that they would put me in jail because of that. So maybe inside of me, I didn't think, I told myself there's nothing to be worried about. Although there was a lot of consequences that will happen. The raiding of the offices, just to be honest, it happened to the offices of the production company that was doing the show. It didn't happen to me. But there was a kind of a certain fear where I had to leave Egypt in 4 hours. And I was wondering if they would stop me at the airport. And there was another incident where I was actually detained in another Arab country when I was still having my Egyptian passport in 2019, before I got my American passport. And I didn't know that this Arab country, there was like a kind of an extradition agreement with Egypt. And I was going to be delivered to the Egyptians. But these kind of moments where you should be afraid of, I don't know why there's always like a voice inside of me saying like everything's gonna be okay. And I was kind of like I have this kind of like very optimistic. You see how pessimistic you think that I was at the beginning, but I have this optimistic thing in me that's saying like nothing wrong will happen. So maybe at the height of success, I always have this voice of keeping me like worried about the future. And when something really bad is happening to me, I have this voice that's telling me it's gonna be okay and nothing harmful will happen to me. So maybe it's like all of these are defense mechanisms.
Are you spiritual? Like what is happening there because that sounds like confidence.
I don't know. Well, I just told you when I'm at the height of my career, I didn't have any confidence. I'm always afraid.
I know, but if
maybe
at the top you're afraid of being at the bottom, and at the bottom or wherever it is that you're afraid, you're like everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, maybe it is a defense mechanism. Maybe like when you're at the top, you don't want to be enamored or infatuated with success, so it keeps you grounded. And when you're at the bottom, you just want to feel that everything is okay, so you don't go crazy. So maybe it's a defense mechanism that happens innately.
Can you tell me about those 4 hours that you're talking about as you were ready to leave, like Egypt, and change your life in a way that had to be pretty scary?
Yeah. So a background for that, we went into an arbitration case between me and my ex-channel television station, and of course things like that in Egypt doesn't happen because of the TV channel. It happens because of like bigger powers do that, but they didn't want to make it to appear as if it is like a curbing of freedom, but it's like a legal conflict, if you know what I mean. So.
A curbing of freedom in disguise.
Yeah, so my lawyer said like there was no way we would lose the case, because basically what happened is they canceled my show. So we went into arbitration, and there was no way that I would lose it, because we delivered everything and they're the one who canceled. And then my lawyer called me at 12 noon, 11th of November 2014, and he told me, you lost the case, now we have to pay 150 million pounds to them. I was like, what? I said like, he said like, we have never seen in history of arbitration in Egypt, we have never seen that. At the time that was about $50 million. And I said I said like, but that doesn't make any sense. It's like, it doesn't make any sense, but under the circumstances it does. You need to leave right now. It's like, what? Wait, there's no jail time in arbitration. He said, under normal circumstances there isn't. Now you need to jump on a plane and leave the country. So I got it 12 noon, 4 o'clock. I was in the airport. I put as many underwear I can in 2 suitcases. Took the plane to Dubai. Stayed there for a few months, and then from Dubai I went to the States. So in that 4 hours, all I had to time, I called my brother, went to my father, told him I'm leaving the country, and he said like, well, good luck. Told my wife, let's just like get me out of the bags and just like put stuff. It was the most chaotic thing ever, and when I went there, I was just hoping that they didn't have time to put my name on any lists. And I left.
Terrified walking through the airport.
Yeah, but for some reason,
everything's going to be okay.
For some reason, I was like, everything's going to be okay. Nothing's bad's going to happen.
What's a $15 million judgment when you don't have the $15 million? And I'm now presently fleeing my homeland,
yes.
But everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, and I know that it's just when I talk about this, I talk about it as kind of, people say like, how do you talk about it very calmly? I say like, I don't know. I think something happens to me that will tell me that will keep me in a mood where I don't panic. Although maybe inside I panic. And I kind of like, that kind of panic comes out maybe days later.
I had something like this happening. I don't know if it's similar or not, but my little brother recently passed away. And
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. The last year of his life had a lot of turbulence in it, or last 2 years really, and there were so many instances where I was in places that were horrifying, heartbreaking, terrifying, and I felt like I was watching myself experience them and being like, you're doing okay here. You're like being gentle with myself while I was in it, but it felt like it was happening to somebody else. It was so traumatic that it wasn't really, I didn't have any comfort in it, but I wasn't quite as scared of it as I should be as I tell you the
Yes.
story in retrospect.
Exactly. Yeah. So you feel it. Like I think this is like maybe a defense mechanism that our bodies, our brains do it in order to keep you sane, or not making you completely freak out. Because maybe your body wants you to be functional. Your brain, your conscious wants you to be functional. So it gives you all of these fake kind of assurances that everything is going to be okay. While it maybe the other choice is like to go completely to lose your mind. So
Yeah, no, that could have happened to me. I felt sometimes like it was happening to me, but not in the moments that were most pressurized.
Yes.
So are you telling your family? Are you leaving by yourself? You're getting on an air, and your wife and everybody understands?
What can they say? I mean, like I just like calling everybody. Like I called my brother, to my father, and of course my wife with me at home, and I just told them, and he said, and they were weirdly very understanding, and the best thing that they did was they didn't want to put any more pressure on me. They said, all right, when you arrive, just like tell us you're okay. It was that kind of thing. And that is like maybe sometimes it's the best support you can get from your family. Is that instead of, because you know how it is, like, oh my God, what's happening? It's like, you don't need to listen to that right now. You're already having a lot of stuff. My wife is the most grounded person ever. And I think because of her, maybe I just went through a lot of stuff that usually people don't survive going through. Is the fact that she's extremely grounded, very understanding. And the same with my dad. And the same with my brother. They were like all very grounded. My mom passed away a year before that. And if it was my mom would be all over the place. My mom was like, she lived on her nerves. She lived just to worry about us. And so, I had like the people who were more grounded to kind of support me within that journey.
How difficult or how much I'm not good enough comes from being raised by a judge and a professor and, people who are accomplished and are going to expect perhaps culturally that you must be accomplished too.
My dad was the most chilled person ever. He didn't care. He said, like, do whatever you want. And my mom was the one who wore the pants in the house. My mom was the strong person in the house. She lived with three men, me, my brother, and my dad, and she was in control. So she was like a strong Egyptian, Arab, Muslim mother who's established in her case. And for her, that is like where all the perfectionism come from.
That sounds a little bit. That's my family. My dad's not quite chill. He worries a lot, but the mother was absolutely in charge. And the same, a brother, and people were always surprised because my brother and my father and I they think of us as big personalities. But anytime we'd walk into a place, it would be my mother up front as the lead.
My mom is always the lead, and my dad kind of like didn't. My dad was not a guy who was confrontational. He was just like a guy who did his job, provided for his family, and he just wanted his time playing tennis and chilling with his friends. That is what my dad. He was like the most chilled, coolest person ever. He was just like a wonderful, wonderful person. My mom was the one who would like push the family into like we need to put Bassem into a better school. We need to to have like a better thing. She was the one who was pushing the family forward always, and she was the one who was she was the engine. She was the power in that family. But that came at a price because she was very difficult to deal with. Because she was very high maintenance, very assertive, very like you can't mess with her. She was there's like you can't even like raise your voice a little bit in front of her. It's like she was scary, but also very loving, always worrying, 100% like just like all over the place, hands on. And this is the I think the duality between these two parents, like the very chilled and the very tense. finds its way through you, and now I understand what I have in me from them, and I try to tweak these two elements in a way that kind of make me survive better. So I need that perfectionism, that kind of like fire, and then I need that chilled out to kind of like put me down a little bit. So these kind of you play with the ingredients if you can.
How many years, days, months did you spend trying to get out of medicine or thinking about getting out of medicine before you actually got out?
Every day. The thing with medicine is that I always think, all right, I'll get out of medicine. What will I do? Because I have to have a choice. And I remember when I finished medical school 2000, and I borrowed money from my dad in order to make a chicken farm. I did a chicken farm. Yeah, I bought 10,000 chicks, and I said like I'm gonna do. Because there was a break between my
On the side?
yeah. But there was a break like a few months before like me finishing my medical school and me getting the residency, and there was also the army. So I had like a space to do something. So it's like maybe I will go into do something to invest money into it. And and I made my dad lose a lot of money on that, and I felt so terrible about like making him lose the money. And it's all right, maybe it's just medicine now. And I went into medicine, and I just went into the trajectory of being a resident doctor, like to be an attending doctor, and I just accepted that as my destiny. But inside of me, I didn't want to do medicine. But but also inside of me, I didn't feel that I was a good doctor. I did all of I did my USMLE, my RCS, the British one, and I was an honor student, and I had like a residency and everything. But I didn't like it, and I didn't feel. I always say I was a heart doctor, I was a heart surgeon, but my heart wasn't in it. So.
You can't do anything joyfully like that.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah. So when I did the YouTube videos and it went viral, and I had like this television deal, it's like, yeah, that's my chance. But even then, I didn't leave medicine right away because my mom said like, don't leave medicine. So all right, how about I take a leave of absence for a year and see how this plays? Because at the time, I also had I was accepted in a fellowship in Cleveland, and I was going to travel. And so I had the television deal. I had my residency. I had not my residency. I had my position in the university in Egypt, and I had the fellowship in Cleveland. So I said, like, I'm going to put medicine on hold for a year and see how it goes. By the second year, I renewed for a second season. I had a lot of money. I said, good, now I can leave medicine. So I resigned.
Do you remember any of the details about where the light went off or where there was maximum illumination on something swelling in you? Here's my way out of the prison. Like you say, when the YouTube show got popular, but are there any details where a light goes on and you're like, oh, this is the path. I must chase this.
It was the second season when I did the live audience. And it's just like the show was like huge. And it was so huge and so big that you think, oh, it's never going to get canceled. You had this a year and a half later, it did. But but at that time, like, good, now I'm earning that much money. And it's weird because a big part of it was actually it's a financial decision. If you're earning that much money, so I don't need medicine anymore. It is very basic. It can be as basic as this. Maybe I just needed something else to provide me with financial stability that I don't have to stay in medicine for it. Maybe the only reason I was in medicine because it was just a known path, a guaranteed path into financial stability, and I didn't have any other option. And when I did, I left it. And I know it sounds very basic and very uninspiring, but maybe that's the reason.
What was your assessment of the high end of what the show could become when you started it? Like, you thought you were creating what to what end?
When I started it, I said like, oh, I want to be like a version of Jon Stewart in the Middle East. And I remember after the first season, the first season was a recorded small television show. It didn't have live audience. It didn't have that dynamic energy that
budget. What's the budget for?
Oh, the budget was very small. It's nothing. But when we were about to renew the second season, I went to New York to shadow the production team of The Daily Show, and Jon called me on the show. And I remember as I was leaving, and I told him, I'm trying to do a live audience, and if I do, would you please come to my show? And he did. And when he did, he attended my show. It's on YouTube, by the way. You can find the whole show. And Jon was amazing. He came to Egypt and he said, I never thought that like a Jewish guy from New Jersey would have this kind of a reception in the middle of Cairo. People were going crazy. And on that day, and when I kind of fulfilled my promise to him, and he fulfilled his promise to me, that for me was like the peak of my career in Egypt. I said, like, they can cancel the show now. I don't care. And I really thought that we had a chance. We did something that is very unique in the Arab world. It was watched not by the Egyptians, but all over the people in the Arab world, Arab people in diaspora. And it was something very beautiful. And I felt very sad when it ended. And at the same time, I felt very relieved because the kind of stress that I was living in, day out. I was very depressed. The day that I got the phone, it's like, we cannot have this show anymore. We're very sorry. I kind of like, I had a sense of relief. Oh, I don't have to go to the office next week. I don't have to go through the stress of trying to produce a very unique episode better than the one that we just did, because it is just a continuous stress. And it's very weird that, like, I left medicine because of the stress, because I didn't like it. And I went to a line of work that I thought it was nice, but I was also stressed out. So it just, again, it is the duality of the stress and the chilling out that I have to deal with all the time.
How and why do you think the show caught on from your perspective? How and why did it become that big?
Because people are not used for political satire and for the kind of comedy where you go and criticize openly the government or the authority or the president.
Starving for freedom or something that felt freer or creatively free.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so, and this is why people didn't like the show. They like how the show made them feel. And this is why when I escaped, when I left, when people tell me, why don't you do the show online? So it's not going to be the same. This kind of hope that people had is gone. Because doing the show from inside Egypt, there was always this kind of hope that things can change. But when that is gone, it becomes a vent. And you cannot be a vent that long. And people will put so many hopes and dreams. And when things don't change, the love and the adoration and the aspiration turn into hate. Because now that it's your fault. It's very difficult, seriously. I mean, I'm telling you, even what's happening now in Gaza and what's happening there. I went on the Piers Morgan show, and now people, because it's going for 100 days and people are still being dead, it's like, why don't you do anything about Palestine? It's like, dude, what do you want me to do? Why don't you speak more? It's like, will that solve the problem? I speak when I get asked about that. But it is just like people pushing you to be a political activist all the time. And you cannot fulfill that because it is very difficult position to attain, because I am not a political activist.
Your wife is half Palestinian. What does she say you should be doing or on this front with the platform?
She doesn't say, she doesn't tell me what I should do with anything. Because, again, even she's half Palestinian, she understands the reality of the situation, and she understands that the reason why people there are having like a horrible time, big part of it is like how the Arab countries failed on their part. I mean, they're not, of course, like Israel is to blame, in my opinion, 100%. But also it's because the people there are left there because it's the collective failure of the Arab world. They left their Palestinian brother face that, and they are not getting well support. So she understands, and she knows that, like me as a person, there's that much I can do. And she's happy that, like, the opportunities that I got, that I spoke up. But also, she's not an activist herself. Because she understands, she's a human. She is more concerned about her kids and about our raising our family. And she doesn't want to be pulled every single day into this kind of, like, misery on the online. Because that's why she actually deactivated most of her social media, because she know, and I think that's the best thing she should do.
Oh my God, it's such a poison.
Because she knows that poisons their life. And she said, like, I need to be there for our family, for the kids. So she's choosing, she's choosing well.
You struggled with that a little bit.
Yeah, it's also the jet lag and the 16 hours flight.
Do you sort of fear the future, or are you hopeful about the future, not just personally, but with everything you see happening everywhere that feels every day to me a little bit scarier, when I've never been a person who's been terribly scared?
Oh, you mean the future of the planet?
I'm just...
we're doomed. I say that with the nicest way possible. We are, can we say we're fucked? Can we say that? Okay, we're fucked. I mean, whether it's climate, whether it's like war, where it's like I don't know, the collapse of the moral system of the world. No, we're totally fucked,
Okay. Well,
and
that's
we're here
good.
to make fun of it. Basically, we're here to make as much money as possible, so we can build a bunker and be safe
So
from
we could,
everyone.
so we could have Zuckerberg's 100
Yes,
acres in Hawaii
exactly.
hiding in
So
a pen.
it's survival now. Everyone for himself.
You mentioned Piers Morgan, the show, the appearance you made a few different times here. Explain to the audience, for those who might not know, what happened there, what you expected to happen there, and how afraid you were of being in the middle of all of that.
So I've been on a Piers Morgan show a couple of times. One to promote my show in Europe last March, and one when they asked me to talk about the Afrocentric movement with the new Cleopatra Netflix documentary, and I talked about, as an Egyptian, about that. So when the thing broke out in Palestine, they called me to talk about what happened, and I was afraid because the propaganda on the 7th of October was crazy, and the stuff that was said to happen, and which actually turned out to be wrong, and a big part of it is propaganda. It was very difficult for me to speak up about what's happening without appearing as I am supporting Hamas or supporting terrorism or like being anti-Semite. So I kind of like I said no a couple of times. But then I saw that Ben Shapiro came on his show and he said the most vile, most horrible things, and I got like very angry, and they told me to come on the show. So I went on the show, and my first interview with him went viral. 23 million views on the first show. That was the biggest that he did in his YouTube channel. And then he asked me to come and to do like a sit down with him. And all I did was that I talked differently about what's happening there, try to humanize Palestinian, because they're always looked upon as like lesser humans who should die. And right now there's like almost 30,000 people who got killed in less than 100 days, and the whole world is doing nothing for it. And all of they're using Hamas, they're using terrorism. Even if ISIS lived in Gaza, there's no excuse of killing 30,000 people in 100 days. And there's no excuse of like dropping what is equivalent to 4 nuclear bombs into like a very congested, locked up open prison with 2.5 million people living there. And the dehumanization of a group of people like that, which is this is like the even Holocaust survivors talk against what's happening in Palestine. So you cannot make this as an anti-Semite thing. There's like the Jewish Voice for Peace who have been arrested in New York and saying that this should not happen in my name. You cannot just like label anybody who talks for the freedom of Palestinian people as anti-Semite. This is propaganda. This is a way to shut down conversation. Every time you talk about Islam, you're an Islamophobe. That's wrong. Every time you talk about like what's happening with the LGBTQ as a transphobe, that's not right. You cannot use labels, or when you talk about what's wrong with America and people tell you that you're unpatriotic. Because I've been there. When I talk about what's happening in Egypt and people told me like you're a spy, you're a traitor. When I talk about against the Islamists, they told me like you're an infidel, you hate Islam. So I've been like with this kind of life. I've been called names by the Islamists. I've been called names by the nationalists. I've been called names by the pro-Israeli people. I've been even called names by the pro-Palestinian, but not being doing enough. So every time that you talk, and people kind of like throw stuff at you as racist, Islamophobe, you're an anti-Semite, this is a way to shut down conversation. And this is like a very, very lazy way to intimidate people about not talking about issues by just like throwing labels at you instead of actually listening to a nuanced, deep, comprehensive, objective conversation.
Can you tell me how much fear you had as a surgeon, or how much of a plague it was to hold human life in your hand and lose people?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You have this kind of fear of like messing up, and if you mess up, like the price you pay is someone else's life. Thank God. I mean, I was an attending doctor. I was not a senior surgeon when I left, so I only had a few patients of my own, which thank God survived. I did like a few valve replacements, and I'm part of like open heart surgery for cabbage or bypass, but I didn't do that many. And as a surgeon, you will have to have mortality somehow. So thank God I went out of medicine before killing anybody. Thank God there's no blood on my hands. I came on time before messing up. I came out, and now I'm just like messing up jokes. That's what I do now.
It is slightly less pressure.
Yes.
But how did you deal with the pressure of that?
Again, it's the calming voice inside of you telling you everything will be okay. And I think it's like when you heart surgery is a big process. So you start by maybe extracting the vein and extracting the radial nerve from the hand, kind of like for the bypasses, or to open the skin, open the chest. You do as you go up, you do parts of the operation. The main part of the operation, which is the valve replacement or the bypass itself, it is up to the senior surgeon or me as an attending doctor trying to learn. So I was always part of a bigger apparatus, bigger procedure. So I always being like part of it. So I would be extracting a vein from a guy who would later die. It's not my fault. It's a senior surgeon. So I don't have that on my conscience. At least my vein worked.
You did your.
I did my job, and the guy messed it up. I don't care.
What a bad teammate.
It's all about me. And I just care about not messing up and killing other people. It's like, he killed them. Why do I have to worry about that?
Who's got a bigger God complex, surgeons or comedians?
See how I hesitated now? Because some comedians have very bad God complex, but usually surgeons. Yeah, they have a lot of they're huge. That's why I couldn't stay there, because there's the egos in that surgery room. Oh my God, there's no place for the patient. So thank God there's too much ego going there. But also for comedians, actually for celebrities, it's not about comedians. It's about like how big you are as a celebrity. I've seen people with huge God complex. Yeah, and it's very difficult not to. When you have all of these people like adoring you, and it is very. I wonder why. I mean, I'm very happy that fame came to me at like late 30s, early 40s, and even when it came to me, everything was taken away from me, and I had to start again in my mid 40s, late 40s. So thank God, like I have the checks and balances to telling me you're not that much of a big shit, you know. But like I've seen celebrities and the dog complexities, and not even celebrities, influencers, just like people with like a few million followers on Instagram. Oh my God, and I see it, and I see when people come in and just like storm you and having all of these people wanting to have selfies with you. I wonder, it's like, it messes up with your mind. How can you not be human?
It's intoxicating.
Fame is very toxic. It's terrible.
Can you take me through the beginnings of your stand-up comedy career? How much failure was there? How much embarrassment? How many times how often were you going home? I'm bad at this. I'm not going to succeed.
How many times I would go home and cry? And because when I started doing stand-up comedy, like anything that you start, you suck at it, especially if you're doing it in second language. And I chose to do stand-up comedy in my second language because I wanted to break free from the curse of my show back in Egypt. The show was so big, it was like a black hole. It would suck anything that comes near to it. So I said, like, I need to make a decision. I will do a show that's not a television show. I will do a show that is live in a language that's not Arabic. And I do it in a format that's different from the show. So people will come and have no expectations. But still, my fans here in America will come with a lot of expectations. And they will come and see me. And I suck. I suck big time. I was not good. And I see the disappointments in their eyes. It's like, oh, Bassem is done now. He's gone. He's a has-been. It's only going to be six months from now. He's going to be driving an Uber. And it's terrible. I would go to these comedy clubs and perform very badly, because it's not just like about like finding the good jokes. It's finding the good delivery. And
in your second language.
And the delivery and the cadence and the speed. And I was, at a certain point, I would just be, I remember like listening to recordings. It's like, oh, I'm just monotonous. I'm just like reciting the jokes because I have to. And it was terrible. And now it took time to kind of find my voice in stand-up comedy. So yeah, there was a lot of failure, a lot of crying. Even my stand-up comedy at the beginning was not a stand-up comedy. It was more of like a PowerPoint presentation. I would use like videos and pictures with me, and so because I would use them to make them laugh, like like the Daily Show, they have pictures and stuff, because I needed a crutch to make me funny, and I didn't trust myself as someone who would actually do something. So I let the PowerPoint, I let everything, and now I'm doing the show just me.
How did you do treating failure as learning? Because I have a hard time with that.
Well, I mean, if you do bad, there's two things. There's two ways to do it. You can either just like actually three ways. You can be depressed and not find a way. There's like you could deny it, or you can. I would actually pay other comedians to come and see my show and give me notes. So I did that. I would kind of like work with people with like I would perform for them. They would come to my show, and I would pay them to come and tell me how my show could be better. So I didn't have any ego and these are comedians who knew me from Egypt, so they have this like great respect for me. It's like, oh, what you did for Egypt is amazing. So, dude, here I'm nobody. Please come to my show and just work with me. And they were very nice, and I benefited a lot from having other people looking at my act and tell me how to improve it.
You must take critique well if you're welcoming it.
Well, it has to come from a place to know that you're not good enough, and you always know that there's always a space to improve, and already going in knowing that I'm not good. So you can either go cry yourself to sleep every day, or you have to do something about it. And if you do something about it, it's to get help, and to get help from people who know that profession more than you.
How long did you spend in this space, going home and crying, failing, crying?
3 years, yeah. 4 years, yeah. Only the last couple of years, I feel that I am in a better place with my comedy now, with my English show especially. The Arabic show, I only started it a year ago, and the trajectory was faster. The first 3 months I was terrible, and then the last 9 months or so, I'm much better.
All 3 years are spent doubting yourself. I've made the wrong decision.
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes now when I mean, now it's better, but like it will be triggered again if I had a bad show, and I'm hoping not to have a bad show. So it's been a while since I have a very, very bad show, really bad show. I mean, I had some times where like I go for an hour, not a single laugh. I had nights like these, but it's been a while that hasn't been there. But again, it's been my same material, and this is where you find the same material. But stand-up comedians will tell you the first special is the hardest to sell, and the second special is the worst to write. So because the first special is your origin story, you try to. And there's people who've been touring with the same show for like 10, 15 years until they sold the first special. So I've been touring with the same special for 3-4 years, so not bad so far. But you're wondering if you have anything else after that special. So I'm kind of like a duality of like, just do what you do good at now, make it, tour with it as much as possible. And there's the other part who's like, will you be able to do something else?
I would assume that you, built how you are from what you're explaining, would get real restless with, okay, this works. It finally works, but now I'm doing months of the same thing that works, and I'm hitting the correct notes, and this isn't as creative as I want to be, and what am I going to do next? I know what works. This is safe. This isn't challenging enough.
Exactly. It's between like, oh, it's safe, just do it, or between like, can I challenge myself and just like have to go through the same 3 years of crying, oh my God, that's not working anymore. So it's between these two.
I mean, but who would welcome that, right? Like that's, you have to choose the uncomfortable path in order to grow. Everyone, the therapists will help you with, go toward the pain, but go toward the failure. That's where growth is. That's what growing pains are. But they're not the ones crying for 3 years, feeling like a failure in the hotel room, doubting themselves.
Exactly. But now I have like this shows like it's so I've been doing it whatever. But also I'm earning a lot of money from it, so I'm keeping it.
That helps, right? That always helps.
Always the money.
It's
the money.
It's always nothing but the money. It always comes back to that. The feeling of bombing, when you say an hour without a single laugh, what human feelings have you felt as lonely as that one?
It's terrible. My God, my heart is sinking. I'm sweating. I wish that the earth would just like split open and just like suck me into the abyss. Even like the term "I'm dying up here." They've even like television show on Showtime called "I'm dying." I think "I'm dying" is actually very eloquent because it says it's not like I'm dead. It's I'm dying. It's the continuous act of dying. You're dying. You're continuously dying for 15 minutes or for an hour. Can you imagine? I mean, because
sounds horrible.
because the thing is like I'm die. You die once. Like I die, but actually you are dying.
Right.
For this amount of time. It is terrible.
And you know it. And you know you're dying. It's not
Yes.
like you're dying. Like you give me sudden death.
You're dying. You're continuing. It's a continuous failure. It's terrible. Yeah. It's a terrible feeling, and I wish I will never get into that. But I will if I want to try something new. I will have to find it in me to kind of like accept dying for a while.
You're selling out shows now, though, right? Like everything, everywhere you go, it's met with great fanfare and not a lot of bombing, correct?
Yeah. This is a good phase, and I'm happy with that. So I'm appreciative of that very much.
But you're restless.
Yes, because I don't know what will be my second shows. Will be like, for example, okay, this is very specific. So now I have shows. I have offers to do Arabic shows in Lebanon and in Jordan, and because I'm Egyptian, and I know a lot. I know I will sell these shows, so I have no fear of selling out. I have fear of what will be my Egyptian dialect. Will it work in a place where mostly Lebanese or mostly Jordanians? Because my show there's. You see, okay, I'm getting into the nuances of my shows. So, for example, in the English show, my best shows, if I ever have like 50-50 or 70-30, I have like 50 Arabs and 50 non-Arabs, or 60-40 or so. This mix gets the best response from my English shows. The mix. Not 100% Arabs and not 100% whites. The Arabic show, in order to work very well, I need to have at least 40 to 50% Egyptians, because Egyptian dialect is kind of like the leading dialect. People understand it more, so I need that kind of like energy in the room. And then the 50% could be any other people from. It's designed to have people from different dialects, but mostly Egyptians. So you see, I have these little things. I don't know if it will work. And I don't know what will the makeup of the audience will be, if the venue will allow to have like good comedy. It's just like and I shouldn't be listening about that. I shouldn't be worrying about that. I should be worried about like, will I sell tickets? Will I do well?
Or not worrying.
Yeah.
I think what you should do is not worry.
I should.
That would be better than, let me choose a different thing to worry about.
Yes, doctor.
I mean, come on. I think the choice is only I have to worry about some different thing.
I know it's terrible, man.
But that has to be your mother, right?
Yeah, that's my mom. That's when I'd had my show in Egypt, everybody would be like, call me amazing episode. I would dread the call from my mom. That would be the worst. It's like, oh my God, my mom will call me. Because my mom didn't care about the comedy. My mom didn't care about the material. My mom didn't care about how smart the show is. My mom worried if that show will put me in jail. Will that show get me hurt? That is the one thing she worried about. Nothing else. And so my conversation with everybody, oh, the show was great, the jokes like, I was like, why did you say this joke?
Did she ever laugh? Did she laugh?
She doesn't. My mom never laughed.
Never laughed.
I would say with her, and she was like this.
Are you shitting me?
And she was like, she was like, like this, And she came to my show once. My dad came to every single show. My dad and my brother came to all of my shows live. My mom attended the show once because she couldn't take the pressure, and she couldn't take of worrying about me. That my mom was born to worry about her children. That was my mom. So that is the constant fear and constant worry. That's my mom.
I will let you go in a second. I can talk to you for a long time. But a book I read one time by Eckhart Tolle about the power of now basically condenses life to the idea of no matter what your situation is now, if you are present in the now, that fear and regret living in the past and fear living in the future, they're useless. They don't help you enjoy the now. You pretty clearly have to do something with the worry unless you think the worry helps you be a perfectionist and it makes you better at your craft, that you need it.
It's easier said than done. I wish I don't have that kind of worry. And it's like, I mean, hearing myself talking to you, I know that is very counterproductive, but I can't help it because look at me. I mean, I was in a very, very, very stable career, and I left it to something that's unstable. And that career blew up, and because of that, I had to escape, and then I lost everything. So I went to the highest of fame, and all of that was taken to me overnight. So you have to understand that I come from a place that I'm not very sure or secure about what's going to happen in the past, because I have seen that happen to me before, and I always worry it will happen to me again. So this feeling of constant insecurity and worried, I can't help it because like my history doesn't really support being confident about what's going to happen in the future.
Well, I can tell you with conviction that you're exceptional at what you do, and you're important, I would say, even though you might not think it. I'm sorry if I embarrass you with that.
No, you're being very nice.
I mean, but what an influence, what an inspiration you must be to others with the choices you make. Don't put that in your mouth. Don't put that in your mouth.
Yeah, I see this.
It's a mouthpiece. It's just a mouthpiece.
To do what?
I sometimes.
What's happening in this room when I'm not here?
People accuse.
Is this like what kind of an underground? What do you guys do? Is this Pizzagate? What do you guys do here? What are you doing in this place?
No, for tour dates, tickets, and more, go to BassemYoussef.xyz. You can follow him on Instagram at Bassem. I was terrified you were going to put that in your mouth. I am a Miami Heat mouthpiece. That's what that represents.
It's a Miami Heat?
I'm a journalist, allegedly, and people accuse me of just shilling for the Miami Heat. They call me a Miami Heat mouthpiece. So sometimes I reveal wrong news in my wearing.
And what is this ring?
I just saw this today for the first time, and I'm guessing
what is happening in this room when I'm not there. What is this?
All right, thank you, Bassem. Thank you. We appreciate your time, sir. Exactly what you think is happening.